Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever and whenever you might be listening to this podcast. Welcome to Pop and Politics. I am your host, Andres Bocanegra, and on this week's episode, we will take a look at a story that has seemed to bridge the gap between the popular culture and political world over the last couple of weeks, and was just recently thrust into the national spotlight, and that is the death of Ahmaud Arbery in an alleged vigilante-type murder in Georgia. Now, some are saying it's an example of a stand your ground or self-defense case, and others saying quite the opposite. So we will take a look at the background of the events, how this case has progressed, and discuss the bigger picture. And it's certainly going to be a case that we will likely follow along with over the next several weeks and months. And it may also be a sensitive topic for some, but we will explore it in detail. So let's get into it. It's episode number 3. This is Pop and Politics. All right, so let's take a look at the background of this case, and we'll provide some commentary along the way. This case was recently thrust into the national spotlight. It broke through the coronavirus coverage, which has been endless, and this all happened after video of the alleged murder surfaced. Now, I do want to preface here at the top that I am going to use the phrase alleged because this is America, and everyone, regardless of their actions that we've seen on video, should be considered innocent until proven guilty. So I'm going to afford people that right, even if they didn't afford people that right themselves. So I digress. So let's give you some context and some background. The case that we're talking about is the alleged murder of Ahmaud Arbery. This happens in Glynn County, Georgia, and Glynn County is just north of Jacksonville, Florida, and is south of Savannah, Georgia. Now, Ahmaud Arbery is African American, and the two men that have been arrested in his alleged murder are white. So there's some context to begin. So on February 23rd, according to Ahmaud Arbery's family, Arbery is out for a jog in Glynn County. And at this point, the two men who have been arrested here, these two men see him jogging, and they believe, according to their report, that he was a burglar. And according to these men, a burglar had recently been targeting homes in the neighborhood, and they believed that Arbery was that man. So the two men that we're talking about are 64-year-old Gregory McMichael and his son, 34-year-old Travis. And when they see Arbery, they arm themselves with their guns. Gregory has a .357 Magnum, and Travis has his shotgun. So the men then get into their pickup truck and they begin to follow Arbery, who is reportedly, according to these men, hauling ass down the road. In fairness, I don't think it's hauling ass, it's called jogging. Maybe try it out sometime. And I should probably take my own advice. But a third man joins them in his vehicle, and he is identified as William Bryan. And he allegedly tries to block in Arbery in this vigilante pursuit. And this is when they ultimately catch up to him, they say that Ahmaud Arbery begins to attack Travis McMichael. And in this altercation between the two men, Travis fires his shotgun in supposed self-defense. So before going any further, to give you some additional disclosure here, according to documents that were cited by the local newspaper, there had only been one confirmed burglary reported in this neighborhood, in this area, between January 1st and February 23rd. One. And that report was a theft of a handgun from an unlocked truck parked outside of Travis McMichael's house on New Year's Day. That's 54 days before this murder, this alleged murder. But I do also want to comment here on the idea that Travis McMichael defended himself from Ahmaud Arbery. In reality, I think it's Arbery who's defending himself. Again, at this point, from all of the evidence that we've seen, and again, not everything in this case has been made public, but for everything that we know at this point, Arbery is out for a jog. And here come these two men with guns to confront him. What is the expectation of him to do? To not defend himself? To simply capitulate and just let these men pull guns on him and hold him? And, Gregory says that his son Travis was violently attacked by Arbery and that the two started fighting over the shotgun. But again, if someone points a gun at you, some people are going to try and defend themselves. They're going to do one of two things. They're either going to try to run, or if they can't, they're going to try to defend themselves and try to disarm you and get the gun away from you. So it's during this altercation, again, that Travis allegedly fires a shot. There's been a little bit of discrepancy whether it's 2 or 3. This shot is at close range. The gun is pointed at Arbery's chest and torso area. And then towards the end of the video, Arbery falls to the ground. But this idea that anyone has here, this illusion that Travis McMichael is simply defending himself, is really out of touch with any sense of reality and is completely just outlandishly ignorant, in my opinion. The McMichaels have no business, regardless of whether they are an ex-cop or not, to act as vigilantes and round up a posse to confront this man, in my opinion. Now, from all accounts that I've been able to find, the Glynn County Police would later tell Arbery's family that he had been involved in a robbery and that he'd been killed by the homeowner, which is a wholly inaccurate version of events. And you have to ask yourself, why is there this inconsistency? It could be, and likely is, because Gregory McMichael is a former police officer with the Glynn County Police Department, and authorities are simply taking his version of events and letting him and his son go home. Now, it took 2 months and the release of some pretty disturbing video and a public outcry for these two men to be arrested and charged with murder. And sadly, it is possible that these men may never be convicted of this alleged murder. Now, again, in fairness, I do want to give disclosure to the fact that since this first video has come out, there has been a second video released in the last couple of days that has shown a black man in a white t-shirt entering and exiting a home that was under construction in this area. But so far, it hasn't been said or proven or been provided any evidence that that was Ahmaud Arbery. Arbery that day also happened to be wearing a white t-shirt. So that is the connection. But again, is that proven? Not quite yet, but I do want to provide that sense of context a little bit. And everyone here should have the right to be innocent until proven guilty. So, but no one should take the law in their own hands. The McMichaels didn't provide that same right to Ahmaud Arbery here in this alleged murder. No one should take the law into their own hands. But there's 2 reasons that these men may not be convicted. One is the prosecutors. The second is a vague set of Georgia law that allows citizens' arrests. Now, initially, the district attorney in Glynn County recuses herself. She leaves the case. This is on February 27th. And she does so because Gregory McMichael is or had been an investigator in her office for nearly 30 years. So the case is handed off to another prosecutor. That prosecutor, George Barnhill, in early April, also recuses himself and writes out this letter that he releases to the public. And in that letter, he defends the actions that the McMichaels had taken, saying that they had probable cause to pursue Arbery and called Arbery a burglary suspect. Now, Barnhill in this letter says that this intention of the McMichaels was to stop the suspect and hold him until law enforcement had arrived. And he also noted that according to him, his belief, Travis McMichael was allowed to use deadly force to protect himself because Arbery had initiated the fight and grabbed the shotgun. Again, I'm going to go back to this point. How does that make sense? Doesn't Arbery have the right to defend himself regardless of his skin color when two men confront him with guns? He's protecting himself and trying to disarm a man who likely has absolutely no reason to confront him in the first place. Because again, we don't have evidence, at least that I've seen to this point, that shows that Arbery was involved in a burglary. If he was involved in a burglary, where's the stolen items? He was wearing shorts. Where is he hiding it? You would have found it. And this letter from this prosecutor is just completely impassioned. It's full of opinion. And in my opinion, it's improper and it's inappropriate. And the reason that is this prosecutor is providing an opinion based on evidence that is in his possession, but that isn't available to the public. And this letter is nothing, in my opinion, but an attempt to poison the jury pool and hurt the attempts of another prosecutor to actually bring this case to court. So there's part number one. The second part that we want to talk about is Georgia law. There is a citizen's arrest statute that does allow you to hold a suspect in a crime in Georgia, but you have to personally witness the crime take place. So, for example, you see someone stealing a woman's purse, you catch someone stealing from your home, you witness someone maybe kidnapping a child or breaking into your car, right? The point being here is you have to personally witness the crime. So here, you want to look at the police report and what the McMichaels say. And what they say is they believed that Arbery was a suspect, believed that he was a suspected burglar who had been targeting the neighborhood. There's nothing in their police report or in their report to authorities, and nothing since, that has actually come out about them having actually seen him commit a robbery or commit a crime. And in my opinion, this doesn't appear to me, and granted, the laws on citizen's arrest will vary state to state, but to me, this doesn't appear to be a situation where these two men should have had their guns at the ready to confront a suspected burglar from down the street. But here you also have to take into account that Georgia is an open carry state. So they do have an open carry law on the books that allows citizens to carry their guns out in the open and to brandish their weapon. And that will undoubtedly be part of the McMichaels' defense about why they had their guns. But to think about this wasn't their home. So they weren't in their home, they were out in public, and they became vigilantes and chased someone down the street for several blocks. But Georgia law, the citizen's arrest law and the open carry law here are vague and likely contradictory, but I did go back and look it up. And so here's what Georgia law says. It says that a private person may arrest an offender if the offense is committed in his presence or within his immediate knowledge. And it also says if the offense is a felony and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, a private person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. So you'll note there that the law does not provide for any use of force, such as a gun, to do this. So there's an inconsistency here about whether you're allowed to do that, because you also have the open carry statute. I digress. But I haven't seen any evidence that the McMichaels had any immediate knowledge that Ahmaud Arbery committed a felony. It could simply be because I've mentioned there is this other video of a black man in a white t-shirt going in and out of a home that's under construction. And that was close to the McMichaels' home. So it could be simply that they saw a black man and mistook him for another black man. Because there's no evidence that the McMichaels personally saw that happen or personally saw any burglaries happen. Because again, there hadn't been a burglary reported in 54 days in this neighborhood. And it is not fair to the citizens of Georgia to give them the right to play policeman with these vague and contradictory laws, even if they are an ex-cop. This is not the Wild West. And this alleged murder invokes, and rightfully so, invokes visions of lynchings, which were not all that uncommon. They were very common in the South, and not even that long ago. Now, when the video is released, another prosecutor ultimately turns the case over to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and it is the GBI that reviews the case and arrests the McMichaels. And since the video is released, you see an outcry from the public. You've seen protests and rallies, and here's where it sort of crossed into popular culture. You have celebrities rallying around the cause. You have LeBron James, Kim Kardashian, Taylor Swift, to name a few. And then you have both presidential candidates speak out about the case as well. The current president, Donald Trump, and the presumptive Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, speak out about it. You've also seen potential Democratic vice presidential candidates talk about it. Stacey Abrams is one who spoke out about it as well. And then you see how this also then blends into global popular culture, because on May 8th, which would have been Arbery's birthday, you see supporters around the world document runs and walks, 2.23 mile runs and walks to commemorate the day he was killed. And again, that takes place on May 8th, which is his birthday. So this story is now coursing through both popular culture and political culture in this country and globally. And ultimately, it speaks to a much bigger conversation that's been going on in America for years. Sadly, what we saw in this video and what happened that day has almost become just an accepted practice in America. Between our gun culture and the issues surrounding race and racial profiling, this incident is saddening. It's upsetting, but it's far from shocking anymore. What we saw was a man effectively lynched in the street that day. Had he looked different, acted different, would the outcome have been any different? Honestly, I doubt the situation would have turned out the same way. And it's so hard to see the McMichaels as anything other than two men who lie in an attempt to save themselves. Two men who wanted to use the power and privilege afforded to them perhaps because of their skin color, perhaps because they were an ex-cop, to use this power and privilege in society. And it's hard to see them as anything other than two men who allowed racially rooted factors to play into their judgment. Because there is no evidence of break-ins or robberies or any crime in their neighborhood for 54 days prior to this alleged murder. So are we to believe that there were robberies and break-ins happening in this neighborhood and nobody reported it to the police? Perhaps not. Maybe not. Maybe they just reported it to Gregory McMichael because he's their cop friend and you'll look out for that guy. But sadly, there's a segment of our population in this country who continue to live in fear, thinking that this could be them at any time, any day. And again, I've said it before, in America, everyone should be innocent until proven guilty. And on February 23rd, the same should have been true for Ahmaud Arbery. You know, lynchings have changed over time. And yes, I can already hear the responses, the rebuttals. But what about black on black crime? What about black on black murder? What about gang violence? Those are all true. Those are all factors. Yes. But racially rooted killings are not a new invention of our time. What has changed is the power of the public to document them through technology. And you've heard the names. Eric Garner, Laquan McDonald, Philando Castile, Atatina Jefferson, Sean Reed. All of their killings were caught on video. How many is enough? How many people have to die in this country before we modernize our gun laws? And you could say that in this situation, you can say that in situations of mass shootings. How many people have to die in this country before we modernize our gun law? How many vigilantes have to take the law into their own hands and allegedly murder someone before we modernize or eliminate citizens' arrest laws? How many minorities have to be killed before we enact reforms? These are the issues that had been brought to the fore by the Black Lives Matter movement. And these are some of the things that Colin Kaepernick was trying to bring light to with his protest. Say what you will about that. Did I agree with his tactics? No. But I understood his right to protest and I understood what he was trying to bring up. But much like I mentioned in our episode last week, this is a moment, and it should be a moment for us as a country, as a whole. And it should call on us to confront the fundamental flaws in our legal and justice system. There are inconsistencies that allow tragic events like this one to happen in the first place. And unfortunately, our laws are not colorblind, even more than 50 years on from the civil rights movement. Even a basic question of who gets to stand their ground in an encounter between a white man with a gun and a seemingly unarmed black man. Why is the assumption that Travis McMichael is simply standing his ground and defending himself and Ahmaud Arbery is not? Why is Ahmaud Arbery characterized as violently attacking Travis McMichael instead of characterized as defending himself? That's a question we all need to confront with ourselves. And this case is far from over and decided. The McMichaels will and should have their day in court. But Ahmaud Arbery deserved the same that day. He deserved to be presumed innocent. He did not deserve to be gunned down on a beautiful Sunday afternoon in southern Georgia. All right, so that will do it for me this week and this episode of Poppin' Politics. I hope you've enjoyed it, or at least found it interesting. It's definitely been interesting to sort of dive in and really take a look at this case. And like I said, it's definitely going to be a case that we follow along with over the next several weeks and months, and has definitely bridged the gap between pop culture and political culture. So we'll definitely keep tabs on it. And we will see you here next week for next week's episode of Poppin' Politics. By the way, Poppin' Politics is now available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more platforms, and hopefully coming soon to a few more platforms. So we'll keep you posted on that. And we'll have a website coming soon. And we've now, at least we're trying here, episode number 3 is our first episode trying to post these up as videos on YouTube. So you can also find us on YouTube and subscribe there. Subscribe on Google Podcasts or Spotify. Any way that you get podcasts, we are going to try to meet that need for you. So I hope you'll join us next week on Poppin' Politics. I'm Andres Bocanegra. Thanks for joining me this week, and we'll see you later.